You are now entering Clearview, Illinois. Today's tale is, I'm not afraid of monsters anymore. It was Brennan's first day in the new house. This was the most scared he had ever been in his life up to now. When he was younger, he used to be afraid of monsters. His parents would comfort him when he had those moments, but ever since they died, he found that real life was infinitely more terrifying than imaginary villains conjured up by his mind. With no one to look over him, he was an orphan and lived in an orphanage. He no longer worried about creatures taking him away at night. His fears were of getting his food stolen or getting beat up. It may not have been PC for a social worker to say, but she was convinced that him being a little 12-year-old white boy would give him better than average chances of getting adopted. She ended up being correct, and 6 months after losing his parents, he found himself at the doorstep of his new home. The place was big, at least 3 stories. It hadn't fallen to disrepair, but there was a certain level of neglect that was present. The grass was cut, it was tidy, but the paint was chipped and faded in olive green. The roof was well weathered, and the floorboards of the porch groaned loudly, as if the wood was ancient. Miss Briggs drove him to the house personally, and she was smiling the entire time, explaining the situation to Brennan as if this were a best-case scenario. Brennan hadn't been in the orphanage long enough to know if this place was any better than that place. As they walked up the creaky steps of the house, the name Payne was written over the mailbox in faded paint. The doorbell rang and it sounded ominous, like something from a horror movie. The social worker made the handoff to Bill and Amnita Payne. Bill was angry even at a glance, with the boxy crew cut of a stern disciplinarian. And if he couldn't fake happiness even long enough to get through a 30-second introduction, how was he going to be when no one was watching? The woman, Anita, was the complete reverse, bubbly almost to the point of suspicion. Brennan let it go because in the long run, worrying about pain to come only amplified the intensity of it. Brennan hugged his social worker, not necessarily because he genuinely was grateful or felt joy from being adopted, but to give her the satisfaction of feeling she did a good deed, even if the jury was still out on that. Brennan entered the home and could hear the pattering of little feet on the second floor. "How many times do I have to tell you, little bastards?" said Bill angrily while stomping up the stairs. Anita just picked up the baton and ran with it, not even acknowledging what happened because it must have been that commonplace.
"You're gonna love it here, Brennan. You have 4 new brothers and a sister to play with, and they're all close to you in age. We have an Xbox and a PlayStation, and the boys have been doing scouts. You're gonna always have something to do here."
Anita showed him around the house, getting him acquainted with laundry rooms and closets, then took him upstairs. When they were going up, Bill was going down, grumbling incoherent nonsense. Brennan didn't think he'd say anything, but to his surprise, he acknowledged him and said, "Welcome home." Brennan tried to force out a smile, but only managed to smirk, rather creepily in fact. When Anita got up the stairs, all the other kids were in a sitting room fighting over who got to play video games. It was in disarray with beanbag chairs and toys thrown about.
"Pause the game, boys,"
Anita said rather benignly.
"This is Keith, Alex, Joseph, and Seneca, and that's Foster over there reading a book at the window. Foster, why don't you finish up the rest of the tour for Brennan?"
The little girl sighed heavily, as if tired. She assumed reading was the same as doing nothing compared to the boys playing video games. Foster took Brennan through the next leg of the journey. She sighed a few times as if she was over it all. She didn't say much, she only drug him along through rooms that meant very little to Brennan without context. When they made their way to the 3rd floor, which was also the attic, Foster spoke.
"How many homes have you been put in?" "This is my first." "Who took care of you before?"
asked Foster.
"My parents." "What happened?"
Foster asked carefully as not to make guesses.
They died 2 years ago, or they're presumed dead. Their car was on the side of the road and nobody found them. What about you? My parents were drug addicts and social services took me away.
The two had made it to the attic, which was converted into a room.
I guess you could take one of these rooms.
Brennan looked at the sheer number of empty rooms and asked,
Do people leave a lot?
Yeah, Foster said simply.
That's everything, I guess,
Foster said as she walked back down the stairs. Brennan took a moment to himself, inspecting the rooms. He picked out a room with a single window and a dresser that had a few clothes left in it from, most likely, a boy that was either older or bigger than him. What could it mean that people left so hastily that they abandoned their clothes? Did they run away, or just not care enough to bring it? The sheer amount of potential options were too massive to comprehend. He didn't need to make things up to prove that the world was an unpredictable ball of disappointment and lies. So, if he really cared about it, he'd just ask and see. And if he didn't find it that way, who really cared? Whoever it was gone, and that was all the truth he needed. Brennan spent most of the day watching the other kids from the fringes. They acknowledged him, but for the most part treated him with indifference, as if they didn't need to bother knowing someone until they were certain they'd stay. Bill and Anita were mostly ghosts and left the children to their own devices, which created a real Lord of the Flies hierarchy amongst the Fosters. From what he observed, Seneca was the closest thing to in charge of the others, though he had a hard time placing where the girl Foster placed in that pecking order. When night fell, about 9-ish o'clock, the Paynes called for lights out. It wasn't explicitly said that they needed to be in bed, but more so to turn out the lights and be quiet if nothing else. Brennan was in his bed when he saw little lights dancing up into the attic. He heard someone whisper from the darkness,
Hey, new kid, come on.
Brennan grabbed his shoes because Keith was wearing his. He silently followed behind him. Brennan noticed the boy slowly twisting the knob to the back door to let himself out.
Hey,
Brennan started to say, but was cut off with Keith making a shushing gesture. Brennan followed Keith into the backyard, which overlooked a wide expanse of forest. All the boy children were gathered at the edge of the far gate.
Come on,
said Seneca to Brennan. All the boys had flashlights and gear as if prepared for traversal. They didn't wait for Brennan to make a decision to follow. They just trudged into the darkness, letting him come to his own conclusions. Brennan could see the lights waning in the darkness and the soft chatter of the other boys receding in the distance. Brennan caught up, finding himself in the middle of a conversation.
I took a few beers, but Bill isn't gonna miss it,
said Keith.
How many?
Asked Joseph.
3. Shit, I guess we'll have to share them then,
Seneca said, as if that was how it was.
You know, Anita walked in on me when I was taking a poop,
said Keith.
Nasty.
Brennan scrunched his face in disgust. He couldn't in his wildest dreams conceive of his parents ever doing something like that.
Where are we going?
Brennan finally asked.
It's a surprise,
said Seneca. Brennan didn't like the sound of that, but he wasn't about to argue the point. The forest was pitch black, and before he lost his parents, it was the exact sort of thing that might have terrified him.
Foster said your parents disappeared. Do you know what happened?
Asked Alex.
No. It's okay if you know and just don't want to tell because it's too weird. We all had weird stuff happen to us here, said Seneca. A rubber man with no skin swallowed my parents whole,
said Keith.
My parents went crazy and tried to kill me,
said Joseph.
I'm moving out of Clearview when I turn 18,
said Alex.
Why? Something is always happening here.
It's sorta cool, Seneca said with a smile. Brennan shook his head in disbelief but didn't say anything. He didn't believe in made-up shit anymore. The children passed through a recess in the forest, then through the gates of Silvervale Cemetery. Seneca seemed to take the lead, and he didn't explain if they were close or not. Though it was dark, the boys saw a man in his 30s mumbling to a gravestone seated at a bench.
"What's wrong with him?"
asked Brennan.
"I don't know. I heard something happened to him a long time ago, and now all he does is talk to gravestones,"
said Joseph.
"Why, though?"
asked Brennan. Joseph shrugged.
"He doesn't really talk anymore, so only people that knew him back then know. We don't have time for him tonight," Seneca said as he led them through the cemetery and back to a stretch of forest.
Seeing Brennan was close to being so lost he couldn't find his way back if he got stranded, he had to ask where he was and get a straight answer.
"Where are we going?"
Seneca could sense in him an ultimatum in his voice. He had to at least give him crumbs to tide him over before the meal.
"I found this cool cave in Scouts. It's not much further. You guys have been before?"
asked Brennan.
"Yeah, it's cool,"
said Keith and Joseph. Alex shook his head.
"I haven't seen it yet,"
Alex explained. Brennan felt slightly better in knowing that he wasn't the only one left in the dark. Hidden amongst the thick roots of a tree and high bushes was an opening to a cavern.
"What's in here?"
Alex said, finally showing some measure of concern for his situation.
"It's a surprise,"
Seneca insisted. The boys crawled in the darkness for a short while until the passage widened enough for them to stand. Even after they entered, their trek wasn't done. Whatever it was that Seneca wanted to show them was buried deep. While Brennan was enjoying the prospect of this adventure, the entire time he felt an unease as if they were being watched. The boys reached a drafty cavern. Brennan stopped abruptly when debris fell from his shoe to a sudden drop. Though he couldn't see down, he could feel an unnatural shift in the air.
"This is it,"
said Seneca.
"What are—"
Alex made a nervous yelp as his flashlight skimmed over something big, bubbling, and white. The weak light was insufficient in encompassing its entirety.
"Is this it?"
Brennan asked while looking down at the mysterious bubbling mass.
"Let's go,"
said Alex. As Alex attempted to pass Keith, Joseph, and Seneca, Seneca pushed him to the ground.
"I never told you why I'm an orphan,"
said Seneca.
"Why?"
Brennan asked, on guard for whatever they may try.
"My parents?
I killed them and gave it to that," Seneca said with a chilling grin.
"Only one of you are coming back, or neither,"
said Seneca. Brennan attempted to rush past the boys, but all three pulled knives.
"Why are you doing this? We're friends,"
said Alex.
"We are, and I hope you make it,"
Seneca added. Brennan could no longer see the thing down below, though he felt it pulsating rhythmically.
"You won't,"
said Alex. He attempted to pass the three boys that served as roadblock. The boys stabbed Alex until he fell down crying. They looked to Brennan, pleased by the sight of human misery. Brennan drug a slowly dying Alex to the ledge, to the precipice of darkness.
"No, no, no,"
said Alex. Brennan pushed Alex over the edge, and he disappeared into darkness, unsure what exactly befell him. He heard a sickly bubbling gurgling below, like the hungry belly of the beast. "Let's go," said Seneca, as if that gesture made Brennan complicit and accountable. Brennan now believed monsters lived in this world, because he had become one himself. You are now exiting Clearview, Illinois. I hope you enjoyed the trip.